Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the madness as it continues. Last night, we had a lot of fun games, and tonight we have more. So, Chris, it's good to see you on this beautiful Friday afternoon. Hope
Good to
you're
be here. Good to be
feeling
here.
well, and some reflections on what was a crazy night in college basketball last night.
Well, I mean, you got to give credit to Arkansas. They beat Gonzaga at their own game. They held Gonzaga to 68 points in a game where they had 77 possessions. However, they still didn't shoot the ball very well. I mean, everybody wants to talk about how JT Notte scored a bunch of points for Arkansas. But if you look at the box score, the numbers weren't all that pretty. And, who came up with a brilliant idea, if I'm Eric Musselman, to let him shoot the ball that many times anyway? If you look at the box score, like I said, I'm just pulling it up here. Notte was 9 for 29 from the floor, 2 of 12 from 3. So, I mean, Arkansas didn't shoot the lights out by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they forced 15 turnovers. They made Gonzaga shoot 37.5%. Gonzaga missed a lot of open shots. Andrew Nemhard struggled. He was 2 for 11. Bolton was 3 of 10. And, Chet Holmgren got himself in foul trouble, and that's really what hurt Gonzaga the most because it took them out of the ability to have those two bigs going up against one guy that's 6'10 for Arkansas and a couple of 6'6 guys.
Let me ask you a question in watching that game. Did Arkansas, by design or by absolute total happenstance, get Gonzaga out of rhythm? Because that was the problem with Gonzaga. They were trying every time they started to get into rhythm, they would either screw something up or Arkansas would make a play. And I don't want to take away from Arkansas something that they may have done, or by the same token, I don't want to give them credit for something that just Gonzaga tripped over themselves. It seemed like they played. It was frenetic. The game was very frenetic.
Right.
There was no flow on either side, and it just seemed to be oops. They would each have a streak where they'd run and have each team would score like 8 or 9 points in a row, and then they couldn't score to save their lives. It was not a balanced game at all.
Yeah, it was I think, at 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Arkansas obviously designed their game plan to force Gonzaga out of their comfort zone. And Gonzaga tripped over themselves. Like I said, they had 15 turnovers. And that's basically what killed them. That inability to knock down open shots. They had a lot of them. Right. They just weren't knocking them down. And that's going to kill you. I mean, neither team shot the ball well. Arkansas shot 40%. Like I said, Gonzaga was 37.5. They combined to go 12 of 46 from three-point range. So there were a lot of bricks being fired up around the Chase Center last night.
Yeah, the other thing, too, was they weren't hitting free throws.
Well, Gonzaga actually hit them better in this game than they did previously. They were 15 of 20. Right. Arkansas was 9 of 14. But, Gonzaga, I think, once Holmgren got in foul trouble, it kind of threw them off their rhythm. Obviously, he's a big factor in their team, but he only played 23 minutes and he fouled out. But in those 23 minutes, he had 11 points and 14 rebounds. So obviously losing him for extended periods probably is what swung that game for Arkansas because you didn't have to worry about him and Timmy on the floor. So it took away that big size advantage that the Bulldogs had.
And not that we're going to say that the officials were bad. Well,
they weren't good. Like Sly just said, he thinks 3 of Chet's fouls were BS.
Yeah, so did Gene Seriton, who was on the broadcast last night. He was, let's just say, he was mildly critical of the officiating in how they set this thing up. And there were 3 or 4 times when the guys from Arkansas, and again, I'm not throwing shade on Arkansas. They won. God love them. Good luck as they move forward. But guys running literally out of bounds, and they didn't call.
Well, that happened in the Duke game too, when Jeremy Roach was way out of bounds, and they didn't call it. Yeah. Speaking of, give credit to Duke. They came back down the stretch, though you have to admit that there were some questionable calls in that game too that
Right.
benefited Duke, that did not benefit Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you got to give Duke credit. They scored 49 points in the second half against the number one team in defensive efficiency in the
Mm-hmm.
country. I said yesterday I didn't think they would shoot better than 50%. They shot 51.9. I'll admit that I was wrong in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get help from the officials and they miss calls, I mean, sometimes those things happen. I know the officials aren't perfect. They're not robot officials like we've heard about with Major League Baseball. But, Texas Tech had chances. They just didn't capitalize on them. I was a little surprised. Davion Warren only played 10 minutes for the Red Raiders, and Santos Silva only played 8. You would have thought that those guys would have gotten some more minutes.
I thought they overcoached themselves.
And that's possible, too. I mean, they're down the stretch there when they were down by 5. When Arms hit that 3, he kind of dribbled around for a while before he decided to finally shoot it, and then looked at himself like he was excited that it went in, which I guess makes sense since it was the only one he made in 6 3-point attempts.
Right.
But you had plenty of time to shoot the ball before that.
Right.
And I think they were just passing up open opportunities at key times and settling for shots that they didn't need to take.
Yeah. I think that they played themselves out of that game. Well, we got rid of another one. Arizona took the long ride home last night.
Well, and I mean, that was one that,
you called that one.
Yeah, we talked about how Houston is a critically underrated basketball team and I don't know what the people on the tournament committee were thinking, saying that this team that is number 2 in basically every predictive metric in the country should be a 5 seed. I mean, I still don't get it. I watched that game last night. It made no sense to me then. It made no sense before that. I mean, and we talked about, experience and grit and tenacity. And for all the young talent that Tommy Lloyd has in Tucson, Benedict Mathurin was 4 of 14 from the floor. Chriso was 1 of 7. Azulis Tabellis was 0 for 8 and finished with 2 points. I mean, those numbers weren't going to get it done. You look at the things at the end of the day. Arizona shot 33.3% from the field. They were 7 of 22 from 3. They turned it over 14 times. I thought they were going to be have a shot because they got Houston in foul trouble because White finished with 4 fouls. Taze Moore had 4 fouls in 17 minutes. But Kelvin Sampson just rotated in the guys off the bench that got some big minutes from Walker and Cheney and Roberts, and they overcame some bad shooting from guys like Sheed, who was just 5 of 16, but he made up for it by hitting 9 out of 10 at the stripe. And at the end of the day, Houston's defense is what made the difference in the game. That and rebounding. Arizona gave up 12 offensive rebounds again, and you can't do that against a team like Houston that will stifle you defensively.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get ready to take a look at the 4 games for tonight. But first,
we're not going to talk about Michigan losing.
Oh, you know what? I was so happy about it that I just totally put it out of my head. Michigan, and that puts Purdue's the lone Big Ten rep still in the tournament, at least till tonight. Michigan. That was another ugly game.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan, they struggled all day long offensively. You saw they were within 4 with 3:19 to go, and then scored 5 points the rest of the way. And most of those came when the game was already well decided because they only scored 2 points, or they didn't score at all until there were 28 seconds left. By then, Villanova had built up a lead.
I got a big kick out of everybody talking about how Villanova was going to be overmatched by Michigan. And I'm thinking, perhaps I had not seen the same Villanova team or the same Michigan team. Because when you and I talked about this yesterday, the last thing I think we said, and we gave Michigan props in certain areas, The last thing we said was that that Michigan was overmatching them.
Yeah, I don't think Michigan was going to overmatch anybody. I mean, we talked about how Villanova has been there. They got a ton of experience. They have a lot of seniors on that team, and they were going to make Hunter Dickinson pass the ball out and make somebody else beat them. And if you look, Dickinson was 6 of 16 from the floor. Sure, he had 15 rebounds, but he also missed a couple of easy baskets late in the game that could have kept Michigan in it. Blew a couple of layups, and you look at all the young guys on that team for Michigan, Houston and Diabate, and those guys, they didn't step up because they were outplayed by Jermaine Samuels and Moore. And even though Gillespie was only 4 of 14 from the floor, he came up with shots when they needed them the most, including that one with just under 2 minutes to go that made it 59-50, and you could turn the lights out at that point. And that's something that Michigan didn't have. Michigan did not have experience. And experience will get you through games like this in March.
And they didn't have poise. And you have to have both. So, going
7 of 14 to the line doesn't help you.
Clunk. Yeah. All right. Well, pardon my total madness with regard to Michigan and a mental break, but let's go to some people who want you to take advantage of this madness, okay? And the madness comes from our friends at Caesars. That's right. Caesars has a cool deal. Caesars Sportsbooks March Madness promo. Bet $20 or more on men's college basketball and get $200 in free bet if your team scores a single point. Now, odds boosts and profit boosts do not qualify in this, okay? So that's a heck of a deal. Now, you got to do this. You got to use our special promo code, okay? WA, Winners and Whiners, MAR, like in March, and 2, all right? And it's all in the show box below. Go down there. Caesars Sportsbook, fantastic group. Remember, you have to be 21 years of age to play. Always bet responsibly. And this particular wager is not available in the state of West Virginia, okay? So if you happen to be out there in West Virginia, sorry, boys and girls, this one's not for you, but plenty of other great things on on Caesars and our buddies at MGM are for you. So check it out. That's Caesars Sportsbooks March Madness promo. Take advantage of it. While we're talking about March Madness, cool stuff, let's talk about 2 other things. One, we have a free sports betting guide. You can still get it for the Sweet 16. You still got games tonight. You'll have games over the weekend. So by all means, jump out there and check our show box for that. And also, let's talk about a chance to win $10,000. That's right, $10,000 without wagering a penny. We like that. So here's the deal. And Chris is going to explain it to you because Chris is very up to date on how this works. It's a free game, and you're going to have to get, you're not going to get the information, though, until after tonight's games are played, all right? Because this is the final 8. And Chris, explain how this works, my friend.
Right, it's going to be centered around the Elite 8 games. We're going to ask you 15 different questions based on sides and against the spread and different player props. All the questions will be answered by yes or no answers. So, for example, if we ask you, is Zach Edey going to score over 25 points against whoever they're going to play in the Elite 8, hypothetically, you would say yes or no, depending on what your thoughts were as to that matchup. If you manage to get all 15 right, you could win $10,000. If you don't get all 15 right, but you still answer more than anybody else correctly, you'll still win a cool grand, which is pretty good considering you're putting up $0 and 0 cents to start with.
And there you go. So all of that's in the show box below, along with our Caesars promotion. So go down there and check it out. And I think that you'll find a bunch of other stuff in there. We'll talk about some more stuff with Chris and all the other stuff coming up soon. But Let's get to the games tonight.
You're betting on spring training baseball. Why?
What's he want to know?
No, he said his parlay today is the Cardinals, the Rays, and the Giants on the money line. Why are you betting on spring training baseball with a bunch of guys where no starting pitcher is going to go more than 2 innings? If that. On top of that, you're going to see a bunch of guys that are going to be, playing down in the minors pretty soon. It's too early to try and bet on baseball at this stage because you don't know, especially with split squad games and everything else, you don't know which version of the team you're going to get. You could get a team full of all the guys that will be playing, in the Cubs case, playing in Iowa or Tennessee come next month. I know Steen and Reichel bet the farm on the Royal spring training game yesterday. Not sure how that panned out because I didn't look. But I look more towards baseball when the games actually mean something in the standings as opposed to, oh, look, we tied. Then what? What happens if you end up with a tie in spring training?
That doesn't help you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it doesn't help anybody from a betting perspective because some of those games end in ties.
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to see, hey, look, they played to a 2-2 tie.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
No. Could
for
be
me,
a 3-3 tie.
I'd wait for the games. I wait for the games to actually mean something from a perspective of, counting in the standings.
Well, you know who the starting lineup is.
Yeah, and they're going to get maybe one at bat, and they're going to sit on the bench and drink Gatorade and spit sunflower.
My favorite thing is to watch them run in the outfield. After they've played a couple innings, they go out and do some sprints in the outfield just to get loose. So,
and no, Mike, I don't jump through tables after every show. I say that for special events. Otherwise, I'd run out of tables.
Yeah.
Besides, if you've ever been to Orchard Park, they have stock up tables in advance because they get sold out at all the stores.
There you go. Good idea to go own a Home Depot in the greater Orchard Park area.
Yeah, that or, find somebody that's a table distributor and, get in with them.
Get a good deal. Get some breakaway tables. That'd be fun. All right, let's talk a little bit about tonight, 7 p.m. CBS, and Ian Eagle and Jimmy Spinarkle on the call. St. Peter's versus the aforementioned last man standing in the Big Ten, Purdue. Spread, Purdue, 13 points. Totals 133.5. Money line, Purdue, minus 1,000. St. Peter's, plus 650. What do you think about that, Christopher?
Well, I mean, let's give St. Peter's credit for what they've done. They beat Kentucky. They beat Murray State. Now, I know Mike is a Purdue graduate. Like he said in the comments, this is one of those games that worries him because Purdue inevitably finds ways to, blow these kinds of games when it comes down to it. In fact, his direct quote was, let me find it going back in here. I'm on the edge of my seat as these are games in the past they tend to blow. Now, that's coming from a Purdue graduate. However, in this case, I think that the size factor that Purdue has going for them is going to be too much for St. Peter's to deal with. If you look at St. Peter's starting five, Nadefo is 6'7", Drame is 6'7", Edert is 6'2", Banks is 6'3", and Lee is 6 feet tall. Not only are Nadefo and Drame 6'7", they weigh 195 and 200 pounds, respectively. The biggest guy that gets any minutes to speak of is Clarence Rupert, who's 6'8" and 245 as a freshman. Now, you're dealing with a Purdue team that boasts not only, Trevion Williams, who's a senior that's 6'10", 255, probably before breakfast, and Zach Edey, who's 7'4", 295. It's going to be almost impossible for St. Peter's to try and slow those two guys down. I mean, you think about it, even if you play Rupert at 6'8", you're giving up 8 inches and 50 pounds to Edey in the low block. In the case of Nadefo, it's 9 inches and 100 pounds. That's like throwing a Super Bowl against a brick wall and wondering where he's going to land.
Right.
It's just, I think, I'm not gonna take anything away from what St. Peter's has done. They flustered Kentucky. They shut down Murray State. Purdue's got way too much size. They're number one in the country in offensive efficiency, according to Ken Palm. They're fourth in effective field goal percentage. Even if Williams and Edey are struggling, which I can't understand how that would happen given the size advantage, Purdue shoots the three well. You've got Stefanovic, you've got Ivy, Eric Hunter's knocked down 34 threes. Mason Gillis has knocked down 36 threes. Even guys that barely play, like Isaiah Thompson, 35 triples from out there. Like I said, Ivy's got 63. Stefanovic leads the team with 84. Brandon Newman has 27. There's just too many weapons for St. Peter's to keep up with here. They might hang around for a little bit, but I think it's going to be kind of like we saw with Georgia State when they played Gonzaga. Foul trouble is going to get to the Peacocks because how are you going to stop Edey and Williams otherwise? And can Banks get enough shots that he's not, swallowed up trying to shoot to keep them in the game? And I don't see the Peacocks pulling it off. I just think that this is the end of the line. I know that everybody will say they'll have the crowd because the game's in Philadelphia and it's not that far away from, where St. Peter's is in New Jersey. But
about 80 miles.
Yeah. But you're trying to contend with too much size and too much talent.
The other thing too that Purdue has that is problematic for St. Peter's is they've got two good guard play,
right,
for Purdue. And if you're small, which St. Peter's is, which was just chronicled by my partner there, you really have to have the speed and you have to have good guard play. Now, that's not to say St. Peter's doesn't. They do. But they're small. They're not as fast and they're not as athletic. So by every metric that you would try to, objectively look at this game, which Chris has just done, can St. Peter's win? Anything can happen, right? But there's never been a 15 seed that's made it to the Elite Eight. And you have to wonder, is St. Peter's going to be that? And is Purdue going to be the sacrificial lamb? Give them tremendous credit for beating Kentucky. That is an amazing feat. But, does lightning strike twice for St. Peter's? I don't think so.
No, and you look at what's happened in the first two rounds. They played Yale. Purdue played Yale in the first round. Yale didn't have a guy bigger than 6'8" in their top 7 or 8 guys. They got dusted by 22 points. And in that game, Purdue went to the line 33 times. Now, we fast forward to Saturday's game against Texas. Texas didn't have a guy bigger than 6'7" that played more than 9 minutes. Dylan Disu is the biggest guy Texas had at 6'9" and 2 1/4. He played 9 minutes and had 3 fouls. As it turned out, Purdue went to the line 46 times in that game. And, Purdue won by 10. Now, Texas has a little bit more of a pedigree when it comes to, playing it in basketball than, say, St. Peter's does. And like I said, they still lost by 10 points. You have to think that based on what we've seen as far as the size differential in those first 2 rounds, St. Peter's is going to end up putting Purdue on the stripe a lot and hope that they miss free throws. But, that's also going to come with the ever-popular thing in basketball. It's called attrition, because if you keep fouling guys, eventually you don't have anybody left to put on the floor that has any experience, and that'll end up being what derails St. Peter's. Now, don't get me wrong, the Peacocks played very good defense, but they play very good defense mainly against teams that play in the MAC, and there's no team in the MAC, and I know because I've watched the Metro Atlantic for the better part of 2 decades. There's no team in the MAC that has a guy that's 7'4" and almost 300 pounds, and another guy that's 6'10", that reminds me of Karl Malone, on their roster. Not to mention, there's not a lot of teams out there that have 5 or 6 guys that can kill you from 3-point range. So St. Peter's, give them credit. They're here. But I think the magic carpet ride comes to an end for the Peacocks, even on National Peacock Day, which was pointed out by Scott Reichel on Twitter. And apparently Jim has frozen. So, yep, see, Jim left. Now, Mike, I know you're concerned since you're a Purdue fan. Why don't you do you think that the Peacocks have a shot at taking down the Boilermakers, or do you just think that this is going to be one of those things where Painter actually figures it out in a game where they can actually get to the Elite Eight and take them out? I know that, like you said, Purdue has had a trend of blowing games that they should win, and that goes back to the Gene Cady era, and his spirited battles with Bob Knight and the rest of the guys in the Big Ten at that point. But you have to think in this particular situation that as good as St. Peter's has been, I think they're overmatched. We will move on, once I find the screen here, to the next matchup, which will be on TBS at 7:30. The Providence Friars, led by Coach Ed Cooley, will take on Bill Self and the lone remaining number 1 seed in the tournament. And there's Jim again. He made it back. Look at that.
Yeah, there you go. I was I was accosted by a group of St. Peter's fans who had just stormed the gates. But we're good now. So anyway, yeah.
Did they get your stuff?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. So now we're at the Kevin Harlan game, huh? Providence and Kansas.
Yep. We were just talking about, Bill Self and everything. Bill Self said that if his team gets the Elite Eight, he won't pull a Kelvin Sampson and rip his shirt off. So, I guess there's that. Oh, Michael thought that you were making a sandwich. He thought that's why you left.
Yeah, I saw. Michael, I appreciate that. I wish I were, but I wasn't. We had broadband problems on the East Coast here. What can I tell you? Sorry,
and Paulie,
about that.
Yeah, I agree. There's been plenty of times that I've called Purdue don't, but in this case, the size advantage is going to be too much for St. Peter's. I just don't think that they're going to be able to hang in, especially with the way Purdue gets to the free throw line in this tournament.
I like Nathan's Rock'em Chock'em.
Yeah, that goes back to, of course, the legendary Fog Allen and everything else.
Yeah.
But, this is going to be tough for Providence. I know that Providence had a good showing in the second round as they rolled over Richmond, who nobody thought was going to be there except us.
Right.
Because everybody thought Iowa was going to be there because Iowa won the Big Ten tournament. But before that, they had their issues with South Dakota State, who was a team that was on a roll. The thing in the case of Providence is, can their defense do enough against Kansas? We know the Jayhawks are a good, effective offensive team. They're 6th in adjusted efficiency offensively. They're 25th in field goal percentage. They're 33rd in offensive rebounding percentage. They don't turn it over a ton, and they're not over-reliant on the three like a lot of teams are. When we talked about teams like San Francisco that jack up nearly half their attempts from the floor from three-point range, Kansas takes just about 1 out of 3 shots from beyond the arc. That's a 279th in the country. And they actually shoot fairly well out there, which is a good behind Agbaji and Christian Braun. They've got an interior presence in McCormick, which is a major plus for them because they haven't had a guy like that probably since Azubuike left. You look, and McCormick is 4th in offensive rebounding percentage in the country, grabbing offensive boards on 18.1% of misses by the Jayhawks this year. They still got Mitch Lightfoot, who I think has been there since roughly the end of the Larry Brown era.
Right.
They've got Yusufu, who transferred from Drake. He's a good player that can step up. You got Jalen Coleman-Lance, who I think has played at about 35 schools now. You got DeJuan Harris. I think that, as good as Providence has been and I'm not going to take anything away from Al Durham and Nate Watson and Horchler and Minaya. They're a senior-laden team. The question remains: can Providence get enough offensively to stay in a game with Kansas? I know that they rely on defense, but they're middle of the road when it comes to shooting the ball. They get a lot of shots rejected. And, they're not a tempo team, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Providence is 283rd in tempo at 65.2 possessions a game. Kansas is 64th at 69.4. And for all the talk that we just gave you about Kansas's offensive numbers, they're good defensively. They're 28th in defensive efficiency, 37th in effective field goal percentage at 37.7%. Meanwhile, Providence is 57th in defensive efficiency. They're 34th in effective field goal percentage defense. I just think in the end, Kansas has, a little more experience in big games like this because Providence has not been a team that you see making much of an impact in the tournament in recent years. They were a 500 team last year. They probably had a shot at making the field in 2020 had we had a tournament because they were 19-12. Mm-hmm. They didn't make it in 2019. They lost in the first round in 2018. They lost in the first round in 2017. So the last time they had won a first-round game in the tournament prior to this was 2016 when they beat USC by a point and then lost to North Carolina. And that was a different team because that team had, Chris Dunn and Rodney Bullock, a couple of guys that play in the association now. This Providence team, while they have a ton of seniors, none of these guys really jump out and say, these guys are going to make the jump to the next level. Mm-hmm. And in games like this where you've got a team like Kansas where somebody like Agbaji is probably going to be playing at the next level and a guy like McCormick could carve out a role as a role player and a big off the bench, things like that. I just think that Kansas has probably got a little too much in the tank, especially with Remy Martin playing well down the stretch. I'm going to lean towards Kansas here just because I'm not sold about Providence.
T-Train, you're someone saying that, of course, Kansas could do something that they usually do, which is trip on their way in. And, look, anything's possible. And we saw that last night. We saw it in games before. But, we try to stick to the numbers. And the numbers, don't always lie. And so we'll see. I mean, can Providence win? Of course they can win. But the arrow seems at the moment to be pointing Kansas as well. So
Bill, what is the total for Purdue for the team total? I haven't seen it since last
Bill
night.
asked about the Purdue game.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the team total is. I haven't seen it since yesterday, so I hadn't had a chance to.
While we're waiting for that, we have a quick Cubs update because this just in from our Cubs update group.
Yeah, Suzuki's going to be making his debut. Of course, the Cubs got him from everybody's favorite Japanese team, the Hiroshima Toyo Carp. I was surprised they threw that much money at him, but I mean, he definitely should make an impact in the lineup if he plays as well as he played in Japan. I mean, nobody's going to take away the numbers that he put up over there. And let's face it, we could use some outfielders for sure, given the lack of production that we've gotten from guys like Jason Hayward. And, we don't really have a great center fielder at this point in time. So I'm guessing that's probably where they'll try to slot Suzuki going forward. I mean, you look at his numbers last year, he hit 317 with 38 homers and 88 RBIs in 132 games. And he actually draws walks, which is a dying breed in power hitters. You look at the fact that in his career, he has 486 career walks against 569 strikeouts. Mm-hmm. You can get 569 strikeouts in 2.5 seasons out of a guy like, say, Javier Baez or,
That's true.
And
T-Train thinks, T-Train says Purdue over 73 might be the play.
I think that's a safe number. I mean, you have to think unless St. Peter's basically pulls a Will Ferrell and semi-pro and jabs a knife into the ball and cuts it open to drain all the air out. You have to think that Purdue is going to get to that mark. You look down the stretch for them. Like we said, they scored 81 against Texas. They scored 78 against Yale. Before that, they had 75 against Michigan State. They had a rough stretch at the end of the regular season where they played against some good defensive teams. But you have to think the volume of free throw attempts is going to help Purdue in that regard. And as it stands, the Boilermakers are 14th in the country in free throw rate at .385 free throw attempts per field goal attempt. Meanwhile, St. Peter's defensively, 348th. They give up .419 free throws per field goal attempt. That's not a number that bodes well, especially with the size advantage. You have to think. And Reichel was asking this. He wanted to see one of the books put up a over-under on free throw attempts for Purdue. And I said, do you think there's a number that would be high enough where you would consider taking the under? Because even if it got up to 35 or so, you'd probably still lean towards the over just based on what we've seen. And with St. Peter's committing that many fouls and putting that many ties on the stripe, you have to think that could help them push over easily.
Yep. CBS 40 minutes after game one, it'll be North Carolina and UCLA. This is a battle of two teams that have been there, done that, saw the movie, bought the T-shirt. So
and then they get a copy of the home game.
That's true. That's true. So some pedigree programs here.
Yeah. Who's commentating that one? Do we know?
That's CBS, so that'd be Ian Eagle and Jimmy Spanarkel.
Okay, so that's right. It's going to be those two guys, right? Yeah, UCLA is only favored by 2.5. I know the big question is whether Jaquez Jr. will take the floor. He's going to try to gut it out as of earlier this afternoon. That'll be a big boost for Mick Cronin because they could definitely use his production on the offensive end of the floor. One thing we know for sure is UCLA is going to get a lot of shots because North Carolina doesn't force a lot of turnovers. Defensively, they are 347th in the country in turnover percentage on the defensive end of the floor, 14.1%. The big question here is who's going to control the tempo of the game. UCLA is 270th in tempo at 65.4 possessions a night. North Carolina 32nd at 70.6. We saw the Tar Heels run that helter-skelter style against both Marquette and Baylor, putting up better than 90 points in both of those games. The question is, first, will Carolina be able to play that style here? And second, can Armando Bacot learn how to shoot free throws where they're not firing up helium balloons? He shoots 68.5% at the line. That kept Baylor in the game the other day because he was 7 of 15 in the contest. And that's not going to bode well if it's a close game because who are you going to foul? You're not going to foul some guy that shoots 80%. You're going to foul him. UCLA doesn't turn the ball over much. They're 5th in turnover percentage. Tiger Campbell stepped up big against Akron down the stretch. You got Johnny Juzang is there, Bernard. There's a lot of talent on this UCLA team. I think if they knew that Jaquez was 100%, this line would be nowhere near 2.5. It would probably be more towards 5 or 6 in favor of UCLA. And I just think that the Bruins, North Carolina, sure, they probably played their best 2 games of the season in these 2 games in the tournament. Their third best game was probably the regular season finale against Duke.
Yeah, I was going to say Cameron Indoor was probably that. But that didn't happen until the second half.
Right.
In that.
But, you look at their numbers, and while they beat Baylor struggled shooting threes. They were 9 of 37 out there. But, UCLA doesn't necessarily rely on the three. They actually shoot the three less than Kansas, who we just talked about. They're 311th by taking 31.5% of their shots from beyond the arc. So North Carolina is not going to be able to take that perimeter shooting away from them and make them a one-dimensional team because the Bruins don't shoot them anyway. Um,
I've seen a lot of UCLA this year, and what they do, to your point, Chris, is they play an old style inside game. A lot of pick and roll stuff, a lot of, inside the arc. They don't do what they can't do, which is, as you say, they don't shoot a lot of threes because they don't hit a lot of threes. But I'll tell you what, they do get a lot of the old style three, where the guy drives to the basket, gets the bucket, and gets fouled. So that's kind of their stock and trade. They're not going to beat you from outside the arc, but they're banging around inside. They do play a lot of the inside game. They got a slash type offense, and that's kind of, again, that's their stock and trade from that standpoint. It'll be interesting to see it, as you say. It's a contrast of styles. Physically, I think both teams are equal. I don't think that one is any physically any better than the other. But I think UCLA just might have a little bit more depth than North Carolina.
Yeah, and to Nathan's point about size for North Carolina, Baycott and Manic, sure, but they're not all that. They're not massive. Baycott is 6'10", 245. Manic is 6'9", 230. And Manic's just, if you ask our buddy Scott Steen about him, he'll tell you that Manic played like a bitch at Oklahoma, and he still thinks he's won now. That's why he got thrown out in that game against Baylor.
Right.
Now, Manic, you sure, he's got some size, but he shoots more threes than twos. If you look at the numbers this season, he took 187 twos in 35 games. He's taken 215 threes. Baycott is more of an interior presence because he's taken 373 twos against 8 threes. But, the problem for Carolina is if they get over-reliant on the three, and we've seen this happen to teams for years, going all the way back to 1991 with UNLV, they were 36 or 37-0 going into the Final Four, and they got reliant on the three. And when the threes don't fall, sometimes those teams don't know how to adjust. We saw that happen down the stretch against Baylor. Remember, this is the North Carolina team that led by 25 points midway through the second half and ended up in overtime. Now, if you blow a 25-point lead and end up in overtime again, you deserve to lose. I just think that, Caleb Love and R.J. Davis and those guys, they're going to fall in love with the three. They're not going to go down. Mick Cronin has been around for a while as a coach. Hubert Davis, I get it, he was a great ball player in college at Carolina. He's had experience as an assistant. This is his first year as a head coach. How's he going to adjust when the game's on the line? I'm gonna lean towards UCLA here. I just think that the Bruins have the advantage in this matchup. And like Mike said, UCLA and Purdue would be a great matchup because of all the history. Of course, the Wizard of Westwood, for all of his tenure at UCLA, was an All-American at Purdue before he started his coaching career.
There's that Indiana connection that he had.
And Jim Damier has a question for you. Is UNC the more athletic team because he thinks UCLA has the better guards?
That's an interesting question. I would say that I would say UCLA is probably a little bit more athletic only because the style of play that UCLA has requires all 5 players to play at an not up tempo, but you know what I'm saying, an ability to, even their bigs can run the floor. Okay, which is good for them. And they played in the conference where, had it not been for Arizona, they probably would have been the best team in that conference. But, North Carolina's not bad either. They're not a bad basketball team. So I would say this is a pretty evenly matched game, and I like the 2.5 point situation there. But as Chris says, I mean, the experience that UCLA brings to bear is something that certainly in tournament time, and especially when you're getting ready to crush to the Final 8, you really need that experience, and UCLA's got it. So we'll see.
Yeah,
40
like you
minutes.
said, if you look at the depth,
Yeah.
North Carolina in that game against Baylor, R.J. Davis played the whole game.
That's not going to happen
Baycott,
against UCLA.
yeah, Baycott and Leaky Black each played 40 minutes. Love played 32 because he fouled out.
Right.
Maddox played 28 because he was ejected.
Yeah. Well,
So you had to
that
play
will end your
Dontrez
afternoon.
Styles. Yeah, you had to play Dontrez Styles for 25 minutes because you had no choice. I mean, he came into that game averaging about 4 minutes a game, and you had to play him for 25 minutes. I mean, he hadn't played in the last 4 games combined. He had played, or the last 5 games even. He played 23 minutes combined in the last 5 games going into that game. He hadn't played more than 16 minutes in a game all season. So that just goes to show you that if there's foul trouble, who does Hubert Davis go to? Because the only two other guys that played any minutes against Baylor, Justin McCoy played 10, and he averages about 6 minutes a game. And
Well,
Puff Johnson played 5, and he averages about 6 minutes a game.
He can always hope that James Worthy has some eligibility left.
Yeah, I guess you get Sam Perkins or somebody out of the crowd.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, you're looking at if North Carolina gets in foul trouble, they don't have a bench of guys that they can rely on to do anything because they don't play them any minutes.
Well, and UCLA does rotate people in and out.
Right. They go 8 or 9 deep.
Yeah. There's that. All right. Well, 40 minutes after game 1, Mr. Harlan gets his voice back, and you got a 10-11 Miami and Iowa State. And I saw somebody in the comments was talking about Miami's got a good coach. Love Jim Larinaga. Wonderful guy. A hell of a recruiter, and someone who, if he's in your house recruiting, it's hard to say no to him. He's a great salesman for when he was I saw him a lot when he was in the DC area here with George Mason, and when he went to Miami, it was like, all right, give him a program to sell and he'll sell it. So, and he sold Miami pretty well, and they've turned the ball over very little in the games that they've played.
Right. There's actually 6th in the country. They're 1 spot behind UCLA in turnover percentage on the season at 13.6%. The bad part is that they struggle on the defensive end of the floor.
Right.
They're 298th in effective field goal percentage defense at 52.9%. So it's either Miami gets a turnover because they're 59th in that category on defense at 20.4%, or they give up a lot of easy baskets. And the last thing you want to do against a team like Iowa State is give up easy baskets, because Iowa State normally can't hit the broadside of a barn. And that's being generous. We talked going into the tournament how they struggled offensively. They scored 36 in a home loss to Oklahoma State. They scored 41 in the Big 12 tournament against Texas Tech. And when we talked about this game last week, when they faced LSU, Reichel said, "Aren't you worried that they scored less than 50 points in 2 of their last 3 games?" And I said, "You can win. You can score 50 points and still win if you only give up 49." And if you look at what Iowa State's done in the tournament, they win ugly. They won 59-54 against LSU in that game. For some reason, and this shows you how Iowa State plays, they were 8 of 19 from 2-point range and 12 of 37 from 3. Because, why not fire up 37 threes for no freaking reason? In that game,
you said they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. There are a lot of barns in Iowa. So.
Yep. I mean, if you take out Tyrese Hunter, who was 7 of 11 from 3 in that game, the rest of the team was 5 of 26. And they still won.
Well,
because LSU was 4 of 19 from 3.
You can't do that against Miami, though.
Right. But, Miami's not going to get a ton of good shots in that game either, though, because we talked about the defense. And just looking here, following up on that, you have to remember Iowa State then had to face Wisconsin,
right,
In the second round, they changed their style. All of a sudden, Iowa State was 17 of 44 from two, and they only took 14 threes. Now they only made three, but that's not the point.
Volume. Yes.
Wisconsin was 12 of 25 inside the arc, but had the brilliant idea to fire up 22 threes, of which they made two. They turned the ball over 17 times. Now, that's the thing about Iowa State. They will get after you defensively. They will make life miserable for you when it comes to trying to move the ball around. They will force you out of your style. Iowa State fourth in the country in turnover percentage at 24.7%. They're fifth in defensive efficiency. They're eighth in three-point defense. They're a top 10 team in steal percentage. So they will make you grind on every possession. This is going to come down to basically, will Miami control things with McGusty and Wong and Charlie Moore, or will Iowa State get enough shots from Isaiah Brockington and Tyrese Hunter and Gabe Kalsher to take advantage? Neither team has much in the way of size. Iowa State's biggest rotation guy is 6'9". Miami has Wardenberg at 6'10", and Anthony Walker is at 6'9". But everybody else, it's a bunch of smaller guys. So you're not going to get a ton of post presence in this one. I just think if you look at the numbers, and I know Iowa State, like I said, they're not great offensively, but they're very good on the defensive end of the floor, and they could fluster Laranaga's team. I'm going to take the points, and I'm going to go with Iowa State. I just think Iowa State's going to take the air out of the ball. They're 237th in tempo, 66.2 possessions a night. They're going to frustrate Miami, force them to make the extra pass or extra two passes, and take shots that they don't want to take. And it's going to end up frazzling Laranaga's team. And in the end, Iowa State wins another rock fight where you might not see either team get out of the mid-60s and advance.
One quick question before we move on, and that comes from Bill McDonald asking if you like the total.
Yeah, I said that I think Purdue is going to make a living at the free throw line in this game. Let's be honest. We talked about how St. Peter's is 347th or 348th in free throw attempts per field goal attempt defensively. Purdue is near the top of the nation in that
Michael
category.
Agrees with you.
Yeah, Michael also wishes that Fred Hoiberg and Marcus Fizer were suiting up for Iowa State. But by that token, I bet you, there's plenty of teams. I'm sure Miami wishes that they could have some of their guys back too. But, to the point about what a good job Laranaga's done, you have to remember the last three years, Miami was a sub-500 team. They were 14 and 18 in 2019, 15 and 16 in 2020, 10 and 17 last year, including 4 and 15 in the ACC. While they've turned things around, they've only turned around offensively because they were 172nd in offensive efficiency last year, 18th this year. But defensively, they were 116th last year. They're 121st now. So they haven't really improved defensively. And I think Iowa State's defense is just going to be a little bit too much because, let's face it, in the ACC, you don't face defenses like what Iowa State does.
Right.
If defense is secondary to, dunks and threes.
Right. Well, there's no question this year that the Big 12 has been – I know that the Big 10 got 9 teams in, but for my money, the Big 12 was a better conference this year, top to bottom in that regard. So, anyway, before we go,
and the Big 12 had more teams in the Sweet 16 than the Big 10.
Yep, they did. And all right, so let's do something real quick before we go to our parlay portion of the program, and that is, let's talk a little bit about our friends at Caesar Sportsbook. Now, Caesar Sportsbook has a March Madness promo for you. Bet $20 or more on any men's college basketball, you get $200 in free bet if your team scores a single point. Now, odds boosts and profit boosts not qualify. You must be a first-time user of your Caesar Sportsbook account to be eligible also. This only works if you use our special promo code. And our special promo code is WAW. That's Winners and Whiners. The first 3 letters of the month of March and the number 2. All of that's in the show box below. Remember that you must be 21 years of age to participate always. Always, always. Bet responsibly. All right. Okay. So,
Lex, that the contest you're talking about, you'll probably get something either late tonight or early tomorrow because it starts with the Elite Eight. Since there's still Sweet 16 games going out yet, they haven't finished formulating all the questions as to what that's going to entail. So I would imagine it'll go out either tonight or first thing in the morning. I will check and find out and let you guys know once I get all the information. Oh, Michael, we're not done yet.
No, don't go anywhere. No. We're stay here. We haven't, you'll get to Scott and Scott before they get to use their new hats. So there you go.
They have new hats.
You haven't seen it? They went out and bought the farm. They got farm hats, straw hats that say John Deere across. And so they're wearing their straw hats that when they get to the Bet the Farm game, part of the program, they put on their hats.
I hope they don't wear those on the NASCAR show, or else I'm cutting out.
You're going. So, well, you better check it out first, buddy. So, yeah. Chris was just talking about the fact that we've got a heck of a challenge going on. It's a $10,000 challenge. And basically, you take the prediction challenge of the Elite 8 games this weekend and prove how smart you are. Shortly after the conclusion of the Sweet 16 round games tonight, which, as Chris said, they're probably going to be in your inbox sometime for breakfast, okay? You're going to have 15 questions, a battery comprising of sides, totals, props, and other predictions on the Elite 8 round of games. You just need to answer yes or no, okay? What do you think that the given bet would win? Get all 15 right and you win $10,000. In addition to that big jackpot that we're offering, if you get first place, it's not bad. You get $1,000. Again, as Chris said, you don't have to bet anything. It comes right there. So jump down to the show box below. Check that out along with all of our fun stuff from Caesars, and it's well worth your time. So now we're going to go for 2 for the money as we blow through this so we can get off the air before Scott and Scott's off the air. So they're right now on MWN2. So here we go. 2 for the money.
Actually, they're on MWN8, the Ocho.
Right, the Ocho.
For those of you that are fans of dodgeball,
the movie.
Make sure you point out Cotton McKnight and his sidekick there.
That's right.
On the hardwood tonight, I'm going to go with Philadelphia, the 76ers on the road against the Clippers. Good news for the 76ers is they're on the road, but they didn't have to go anywhere because they just beat the Lakers in the Crypto Dome the other day. Just going to take a quick look here, see if I'm missing anything exciting on the injury report, because inevitably something will pop up that wasn't there before, just because people like to screw with us. Injury report says...
It's what they do.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, look at that. The 76ers have nobody to talk about on the injury report. Of course, you never know if they'll change that between now and then, so always keep an eye out for it. Meanwhile, for the Clips, you won't see, of course, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, or Norman Powell. Jason Preston and Jay Scrubb also both out. Robert Covington is questionable with a sprained hand. Either way, I'll stick with the 76ers. We said UCLA over North Carolina. We talked about Purdue and St. Peter's. And I'm going to go with the Colorado Avalanche bouncing back at home tonight as they beat up on the Flyers. The Flyers, of course, were victorious last night against the St. Louis Blues in a game that surprised everybody that thinks the Flyers are a bad hockey team. But I'm going to go with the Avs. I think they bounce back. I think they should probably smash Philadelphia, win by multiple goals. Flyers, not a great road team. The Avalanche, very good at home. and looking to bounce back from that loss to Vancouver.
Okay, 4 for the show.
Yeah, we're going to go with Iowa State over Miami. Like I said, Kansas, that line, of course, we've said shifted. It's -7 now over Providence. I'm going to take the Caps over the Sabres. I just think Buffalo can't sustain success. It's not something that's in their DNA. And speaking of one-sided games, I look for the Flames to beat up on the Coyotes at home in Cowtown. The Flames looking to bounce back from that loss to San Jose the other day. Unfortunately for our buddy Ryan, San Jose did not beat Edmonton last night. They were trucked by the Oilers.
And on to what everybody loves to watch, the menu. Shot in the dark.
And it's long. Before I get to that, Michael, I agree. I like the Pistons tonight. Hopefully they don't trip over their own feet like they did the last time they were a favorite when I said they would beat Portland. And then they probably went out and lost outright to Portland. But I think that the Pistons, they're the better team tonight as they take on everybody's favorite team, the Washington Wizards.
Yes.
Speaking of, for the Washington Wizards, they will have absolutely nobody of value playing outside of Kristaps Porzingis, as Bradley Beal, Daniel Gafford, Kyle Kuzma all out tonight for Washington. On the flip side for the Pistons, Hamidou Diallo still out with that broken finger. Isaiah Livers is out with a concussion. Chris Smith out with a knee sprain. But you'll have Cade Cunningham, you'll have Jeremy Grant, Kelly Olynyk, and the rest of those guys. I like the Pistons in that one. I meant to put it on my list, but there are so many other exciting games to put on there. I'm going to go with St. Peter's and Purdue edging over the number just thanks to free throw volume. I think that Purdue can do enough to push this one over. And St. Peter's will probably hit some garbage threes to push it past the number 2. Same token, North Carolina, UCLA, I'll go over 141.5. There's a lot of offensive weapons there. We said North Carolina's gone over 90 in both their tournament games. UCLA bounced back from that stiff game against Akron to put up 72 on a good St. Mary's team. And North Carolina doesn't play defense like either of those teams. So there should be more points to be had here. Providence, Kansas, I like to fall under 141.5. I just think that it's now 142, of course. I just think that this game is going to end up something like 73-64, 73-63, something like that. So it ends up short of the number. Same token, I expect another rock fight with Iowa State. We talked about how Iowa State's won 2 games with totals of 113 and 103. 131 seems like you're going from here to Mars as far as the leap that you're trying to make there. On the hardwood, I'm going to go with Utah -4 over Charlotte. I just think that the Hornets are too inconsistent. The Jazz will have everybody outside of Bogdanovich back tonight. Whiteside's questionable, but I think he'll play. Meanwhile, Gordon Hayward's still missing for the Hornets. That's a big blow for them. The Hawks over the Warriors. Now, the Warriors have burned me twice this week, so I'm due. They lost to Orlando and then turned around and beat Miami. You still don't have Curry. You don't have Wiseman. Iguodala is questionable. For the Hawks, Bogdanovich is questionable. So, yeah, both the Bogdanoviches on the injury report. I'm sure Chuck will have a field day with that. John Collins out, of course. Skylar Mays also out for the Hawks. But they still got Trae Young, and they got Gallinari, and they got Clint Capella, and they got all those other guys. As long as Atlanta doesn't fail to play defense at all, they should get the win. I'm going to take Dallas +3 over Minnesota. We saw these teams meet Monday in Dallas. The Mavs picked up a 110-108 win. I know going to Minnesota can be a bit of a challenge. Davis Bertans is out for Dallas, as is Sterling Brown and Trey Burke and Hardaway, who's been out for a while. Jaden McDaniels and McKinley Wright are out for Minnesota. Towns is questionable with a forearm issue, so keep an eye out to see if there's any shift in his status. Now, take note, I skipped the Heat-Knicks game because if you look at the injury report, it seems like half the guys for Miami are on it. Kyle Guy and Oladipo and Javonte Smart and Gabe Vincent are all out. PJ Tucker and Duncan Robinson and Caleb Martin and Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and Shaq are all questionable. Meanwhile, the Knicks, who cares, because they're the Knicks. Cam Reddish is obviously done for the year. Derrick Rose, Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson are questionable. I'd like to think Miami could win, but after watching them nearly get into a fight with Jimmy Buckets and Udonis Haslem the other day, I think that I'm going to stay away from that until I see if they can get some cohesion back. Spoelstra has his work cut out there. On the ice, we're going to go with the Flyers and the Avs going over 6.5. I just think that Colorado's due for an offensive breakout, and Philadelphia is pretty good at giving up goals. So look for that to go over 6.5. I like the Rangers at home over the Penguins. These two teams battling for second place in the Metropolitan Division. And boy, those divisions really crowded up. Tampa Bay, lost yesterday. That bumped them down to a wild card spot in the Atlantic. So quite a lot of excitement going on down the stretch. And Winnipeg over Columbus. I know Winnipeg lost last night to Ottawa, but Columbus doesn't impress anybody. I think the Jets should bounce back at home.
There you go. Guys, before we get out of here, we want to let you know that you should watch our entire Max Wagers team. Midday Money with Sean Higgs. That's at noon. Followed by Morning Wood with our buddy Allie Burns, 1 to 2. Then it comes Just Parlays with Chris King. And right after, actually, you'll be in the middle of it, but that's okay. You can go back and watch it later. Back to the window with Scott and Scott, 3 to 4 p.m. and Game Time Decision with Nick, Tim, and Lenny at 5. That's 6 hours, folks, of all kinds of fun and good wagering information right here on the Max Wagers Network. Okay, Chris, any final thoughts before we head out for the weekend?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a rough night for St. Peter's. It was a good ride while they were here, but all good things must come to an end, especially when you're a 15 seed. And as the saying goes, the Cinderella story, well, do you remember what happened at midnight? The carriage turned into a pumpkin, and Cinderella went home crying. That sums up St. Peter's tonight. And
as the Geico Gecko says in those commercials about pumpkins, they're really hard to ride. So
that's true.
That is true. So, we're leaving you with that sage wisdom from the Geico Gecko. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Hope your team wins, regardless of who they are. And if you cash those bets, remember we said that we have a contest coming up. If anything having to do with what Chris predicts here, show us that, give us a picture of that winning ticket that you have. You've got our Twitter accounts right in front of you. Send it to us. Take a picture of it, send it to us. And, we'll put you in the list as the first entries into that contest. More information on that contest coming up, okay? Don't forget on your way out to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so that you get the notifications when we do our shows, which are Monday through Friday, every day at 2 p.m. It's been fun, guys. We really greatly appreciate you coming over and being with us. Check the show box below for all of the giveaways and all the fun prizes. Be sure to get that last opportunity sometime after midnight tonight. You can keep trying to log in to get that opportunity to win the $10,000. As I said before, as Chris was saying, we expect it'll be out sometime around your breakfast time tomorrow, giving you plenty of time to fill it out. Okay. All right. So until Monday, guys, have a wonderful weekend and enjoy all the basketball. And of course, those of you who are betting on spring training baseball, God love you. Okay, here we go. Take care, everybody.